Another type of useful asset that can be extracted out of this roof is a 2.5D surface, like for example the edge of the roof alongside the alpha map, which will be drawn separately or baked, it doesn't matter much. Let's call our old friend the plane companion. And imagine that this is our canvas onto which we will be inpainting the details of the edge of the roof and the inner contents encapsulated by the surface of the plane. So only the stuff that is covered by the surface of the plane, or rather by a projection of the surface of the plane, will get baked in. Something like that. And I'm drawing the extra edges with the use of the Ctrl+R shortcut for adding edge loops. I'm doing this in order to align the plane to the underlying geometry of the roof with the use of the shrink wrap modifier perhaps. But the mode should be changed to project, because we don't want to snap the vertices of one model to the vertices of the other model. We want to simply project stuff. Both negative and positive directions should be turned on, and I think it worked pretty well. Boom! Teleport inside RC. And bring the plane with you. We can find it by pressing import, navigating to the folder where we have exported it off camera obviously, and in order to see it in its full glory we need to go down into the view menu and choose the sweet rendering mode. Not so sweet if you ask me, without any textures, but that is easily fixable. Let's name the model first, to not accidentally mistake it with the other model, so that is shelter. Go into the texture reprojection menu, select our shelter as the result model, and select the source model as well, which is in this case the ultra high poly. Long story short, we need to reproject all the usual maps, like displacement, normal map, and the diffuse color. But then we will have to paint the alpha, because we haven't baked it. We could by doing some node magic in cycles or something like that, but I will do it in GIMP. I loaded up a diffuse color map into it and I'm adding a new mask. And this mask being a completely white right off the bat, meaning a completely opaque. Now I'm gonna use the black color to paint the transparency. If you have some time, it can definitely be painted in a totally manual way. Like by using the black color, you define the transparent areas. It is really just a matter of time, and it takes quite a while. There are some neater alternatives to just painting the mask by hand. It's using all kinds of magic wands, or however you call it. In Affinity Photo, there is a nice tool called Selection Brush Tool. What it does is basically extend the selection to the boundaries of what it perceives to be a separate object. It kind of guesses where the edge should be, and then you can help it out by painting extra masks, but the starting point, in my opinion, is pretty good actually. After the mask is more or less nailed down, we can copy-paste it into its own layer and pretty much call it a day. It may require some manual cleanup though. It can be done using masks once again. So I'm gonna create a black and white mask, select any kind of hard brush, and just neaten the mask by carefully brushing the edges and what I think shouldn't be there at all. And once I feel that the result is good enough, and it shouldn't be perfect, practically never should be, I go to File, Export, and export as one of the formats that have an alpha, transparency in other words, for example PNG. So that's how we baked the edge of the roof and then went an extra mile with painting an alpha map for it. As far as the material goes, it's pretty simple, just the usual principled BSDF shader with diffuse and normal map. The only thing that is different is the alpha map, and it needs to be connected into the alpha input of the material, basically. In order for transparency to actually show, you need to check the blend mode, Within the material properties in the Eevee render engine, it should be set to alpha hashed. And this is pretty much it. Just make sure that the transparency really shows through in both Eevee and Cycles. There shouldn't be any problem in Cycles though. Jumping back into our test scene with the roof assets, let's see how we can use this alpha mapped plane. There is a trick to making it look three-dimensional even without displacement. Watch this, we can duplicate it by pressing Shift D and position it just below the original one. And it should trick the eye into seeing the thickness at the cost of some performance drop. And then our glorious alpha mapped asset can be used to break up the repetition or break up the straight lines of the roof, especially once the tileable texture will come into play. Working with these silhouettes is really important. I can't overstate how important it is, especially when you're working in the realistic setting. So the assets like these are must-have. We can delete a bunch of polygons and use the shortened version of it. Something like that. So that's the idea behind baking the alpha mapped planes.